All right, there we are. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our story time for the new book, If Animals Gave Thanks, from Anne Whitford Paul and David Walker. We have them here to do a great story time for us all today, and I'm going to give it up to them.
Okay. Hey, David.
Hi, Ann. How you doing?
It's so good to see you, David.
Nice to see you, and fun doing a little virtual story time and signing on this thing. So great, and thanks to anybody who's out there who joined us. We cannot see who's here, so hopefully there's somebody out there.
Thank you for coming, whoever has, and thank you to Children's Book World. We're gonna start out by telling you a little bit about ourselves, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about how the series got made, and David's gonna show you some art, and then we're gonna read the book. And that's sort of the schedule. And at the end, if we have time for questions, we'll take those too. So real quickly, I live in Los Angeles. I've been writing children's books for years and years and years. I don't want to say how many, but I was inspired to write books by my 4 children. And I loved reading story time to them at night before they would go to bed, sitting so close that our skins would touch and we would be focused on the book. And I loved that so much that I decided I wanted to write books for other adults to share with children. So that's how I got into it. David, what about you?
So my story is, it probably started when I was about the same age of the kids that we're getting ready to read a book to. When I was a very, very little kid, it was my favorite hobby was to walk around with a sketchbook and a pencil and to draw constantly. As my parents tell me, I was never far away from doing a drawing of something, and really very little of that has changed. I loved it as a kid. Followed it all the way through and did it in college, and then went from college to working at a company called Hallmark Cards, where I got to do all kinds of cards and ornaments and a million other types of products. And eventually my career circled around to where I got the opportunity to do children's books. And that started about 20 years ago. And I've since done about 55 different children's books right now. And luckily, how many with you, Ann? Maybe 6?
Yes, but David, I remember our editor at the time called me up and said, I would like you to try this, see what you think of this new guy that I think your first book was Little Monkey Says Goodnight.
Right. And then exactly, way back in the day, I had a calendar that was out with another company, and luckily, our editor at the publishing house had this calendar sitting in her office, and she said, "I'm going to ask this guy if he would like to illustrate a book," and that completely changed my entire career going forward, because that was, as you said, my first book, and then that eventually rolled into another, and now it's really all that I do is children's books right now.
Well,
so thanks for the start.
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for your art. You know, I love your art, but I want to announce to everybody that David has just sold his first book that he's written and illustrated.
Oh yeah.
So
that's a new
big,
direction for me.
Big move. So, yeah. Okay. First of all, I'm going to move in to talk with you about how a series gets made. And it's really serendipity. The first book that David and I did was Little Monkey Says Goodnight. And then I was inspired by a game that I used to play with my children. We lived near the zoo, and we would go to the zoo almost 2 or 3 times a week after they would waken from their naps. And when we would come home, we would play a kissing game at night before they went to bed. We would kiss like the animals do. We would make an elephant trunk. We would stretch our necks like giraffes and wiggle on the ground like snakes. And we would kiss. That was how we would kiss goodnight. And it was a fun game. And I decided I would like to write this book about it. And deciding to write a book and writing a book is a very long process. In fact, this book was inspired by my son, who when he was 3, and the book came out when he was about 23. So it was a long time. And it was called If Animals Kissed Goodnight. And here's the elephant on the cover who's coming to hear us today. Did you see it? Yeah. Okay, David designed this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now the book is about a sloth who keeps kissing over and over and over. And sloths are very slow, so they do slow kisses. But what happened was the book came out as a picture book. Our editor left the company and a new editor came, and this was just a picture book and it went out of print. And I couldn't believe that it went out of print. It was still selling. And then this new editor had it made into a board book. And this is how it happened. And this is what I mean by serendipity. You know, kids, you're doing something and you think it's going well, and then all at once it ends. And then she said to the marketing people, you cannot take this book out of print. My son loves this book. So we had an editor and who had a kid this age who loved this book and wanted us to do more. So I tried to do more. I did If Animals Bathed in Tubs. They didn't like that. I did If Animals Wore Clothes. They rejected that. And finally, they gave me an assignment. They said, what about writing If Animals Said I Love You? Now, I didn't like assignments when I was in school, but I really love writing assignments. It forces me to go into different places and places that I wouldn't expect to go. And after that, they asked me to do If Animals Celebrated Christmas. And that was so much fun because I loved Christmas. I go crazy decorating my house and just crazy. So that was especially fun to write. Then another assignment, If Animals Went to School. And that I had to go and visit a nursery school because my kids were long out of nursery school. And I had to be reminded of what it's like. And this was another assignment. And this is the book that we're going to focus on, that I'm going to read to you later. But right now, let's let David talk a little bit about the art of the earlier books. Right, David?
Yeah, I think maybe what I'm going to do, just to hopefully hold some interest for these little kids, is I'm just going to kind of show a little bit about what it's like to be an artist. And I'm certainly going to use some of the artwork from the earlier books as well. But when I was really young, I had an opportunity to meet an artist who got to do this for their job. And I was fascinated by that because I thought it'd be the greatest job in the world, and had no idea at the time that I would actually be lucky enough to be able to grow up and do that myself. But after years of practice and going to school, I developed a way to do these children's books that I would like to share with you. And I work entirely by hand. I know a lot of artists work on computers, and that's great. Mine is still entirely by hand, and I use some tools that you might have around your house. So you could ask your parents, can I just get a big pad of paper and a pencil? And that's all you need. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need anything that's going to make a mess. I still work in a little sketchbook just like this. And I just fill it up with drawings. If you can kind of see there, I hope you can kind of see those a little bit. And I just do sketchbook after sketchbook after sketchbook. And that's how I practice all the time, even when I'm not working on an assignment that I'm doing for my job. I also just do that for fun. So when I do get an assignment, what that shows up as is, say, if Anne were to write a story and a publisher, those are the people that make the books, and the publisher says, David, Anne just wrote a story and I would like for you to do it. And I, of course, would say, wonderful, show me the story. The story shows up just like this, and that's about it. It shows up just on 2 pages. And it's my job to turn those written words into something that you can look at while your story is being read. So I'm an artist, but I'm a special kind of artist. It's called an illustrator, if I didn't say that before. And an illustrator is just an artist whose pictures go along with words and they tell a story. And that is it's a new challenge, above and beyond maybe sometimes just doing a picture, which I also do those as well. But when you have to tell a story, it's a new challenge, and it's one that I really, really enjoy. So when I sit down to illustrate a story, this is what the drawings will look like. And I just do these on just regular paper, just the same kind that your parents probably have in the printer at home. You can just pull that out. And this is the way that I do it. You see how the words are in there? And it just tells a little bit about what's going on. And I do drawing after drawing after drawing. Here's one from our recent books, I think. No, wait, maybe not. I'll show you one from a book that I did with Anne there. Here's one. Hope you can kind of see it. So there we go. It's a porcupine that's a friend with a giraffe, and he's knitting him a scarf. So that's another book that we have coming out soon. But I just do lots and lots and lots of drawings, as you can see. Once I have the drawings exactly the way that I want them, then I paint them. So I didn't do this as a kid. When I was a kid, I would sit down and I would just do the drawing all at one time. But when you're working on a book as an adult, I do the drawings. I work out all the problems with the drawings and the way it fits on the page and where the words are going to go and how the story is interesting on every page as you turn it. So that's my job. So I do a lot of drawings first because it would take forever to paint it in case you messed it up. So once I get the drawings exactly where I like it, then the paintings will look like this. It's a story I did about a little guy that was afraid of storms. So he invited all of his pet friends to jump in the bed with him. And here's a story that I did for one of Anne's books. And this one is if animal, help me with the
Celebrated Christmas.
Celebrated Christmas. If animals celebrated Christmas. So there you can see it's got a Christmas theme to it. The polar bear panda, right? And here's the cover art for it. And I do all of this just with small brushes. Again, nothing fancy. You can get them in a craft store, and just regular acrylic paints. And that's how I do it. And if your parents don't want you to have paints, ask them if you can get some colored pencils. Those are really fun to do too, if you like working in color. So there's a little insight into what I do for a job every day. And that's where the artwork comes for Anne's wonderful books.
And here I have, if I can open it, colored pencils. Sometimes I think it would be fun to draw like David, but Mine don't come out anywhere near as lovely as yours, David.
Like everything else, it takes a lot of practice, but it is possible.
Lot. You know, you mentioned words in a picture, how few words there were in a picture book. And I think our books center around about 250 words.
Okay.
So it's very short. And I'd like to add here that a lot of people, when they first hear about writing picture books, they think, oh, that would be so much fun and so easy. It's so short. But the shorter it is, the harder it is, because every word, we try and make every word the right word. If it isn't, it stands out, it jars. So about 250 words, and I'm going to read you If Animals, oh, I'm getting an email from someone that the link isn't working. Maddie.
You can direct them right to our YouTube page. Probably they can check it out afterwards since we're halfway through. Maybe we can send them a video afterwards.
Oh,
okay?
yeah, don't make it start over, Maddie.
No.
No. No worries.
Now I'm going to, okay, good. Let's go and read the book. And every time I go to a signing, I bring the animals that are part of the book to hear the story too. So here is Bear, who is sort of the star of If Animals Gave Thanks. Here is Sloth, which I mentioned, which is the star sort of Animals Kissed. A gorilla, star of If Animals Said I Love You. Oh, the koala from If Animals Celebrated Christmas. And last but not least, Beaver, who was so shy about going to school. So here they are, and I'm going to put on my share screen, and I'm going to pull up the story, and we're going to read it together. So can you see it?
Looks great.
Okay. If Animals Gave Thanks by Anne Whitford Paul, pictures by David Walker. Here we go. I love those pages. Oh, one of the fun things about being an author is that you get to, when you publish a book, you get to dedicate it to someone special in your life. And you can see here, I've dedicated this book to Owen. For Owen, I'm thankful for you. Owen is one of my grandchildren, and I'm thrilled to say I have 7 grandchildren. And we are going to have at least 7 books in this series. We have 2 more coming out. So each of my grandchildren will get a book dedicated to them. So, if animals gave thanks when temperatures fell, Rabbit would rumble a thank you purr for the spring in his hop and the thick of his fur. Squirrel would squeak for her tail she can puff up over her head, an umbrella of fluff. And Bear, sensing summer was over, would gratefully gather clumps of sweet clover. If animals gave thanks when wild winds whooshed, Crow would caw, caw for the great bowl of sky, his playground to swoop, loop-de-loop and fly. Raccoon would chirr, chirr, thanks for her cub, and nuzzle him, and rubby rub. And Bear would be grateful for Honeybee leading him to the hive in the tree. What do you think he's going to get there, huh? We'll see. If animals gave thanks when leaves fluttered down, frog would croak, croak for her bug-catching tongue and her lily-pad boat. Beaver would yip for his tail like an oar, thankful it steers him paddling to shore. And bear would shuffle, grateful to pick a basket of berries, pickety-pick. If animals gave thanks when branches turned bare, turtle would click for his hard-shelled dome, thankful he never had to leave home. Actually, I'm thinking about that in relation to our COVID and staying at home, and it's not so bad. Turtles do it all the time. Skunk would hiss, hiss for her stinky spray. Coyote would howl, thanks for the bright sunny day. And bear would paw in the lake, swish, swish, grateful to catch a gigantic fish. Then he'd grill that fish and busily bake berry pies and a honey cake. He'd brew clover tea and invite his friends too. They'd chitter and chatter, chomp, chomp, chewy, chew. Then basking in in the brisk fall weather, they'd give thanks for the bounty and for being together. And then we get the end pages again. So, okay, I want to stop sharing screen. And let's take a minute. Those of you who order the book from the store will also get this sheet, which is for you to fill in. What are you thankful for? You can actually get this on my website, Ann at annwhitfordpaul.com. And you can pull it down. There's a link there on the book page to pull it down. So I'd like to take a minute, David, maybe to hear some things that you are thankful for.
Well, I think in keeping with this, I'm really thankful for the job that I get to do every day. I'm thankful that I had such an interest as a kid that I was able to focus on all my life, and I'm glad that I enjoy it so much still, even at this age, which I'm not a kid anymore, obviously. So I'm thankful for that. And then, of course, you have to say, even though my kids are a little older, I'm thankful for them too.
Of course, of course. Well, let me see. I'm thankful for you, David, for the great work you do on these books. I'm thankful for chocolate cake and peanut butter cookies, and my wonderful husband and children.
Well, I hope you're not doing this in order, Ann.
No, I'm not doing it in order.
Okay.
That's very cute, David.
You're going to be in trouble.
I asked my grandchildren what they were thankful for, and maybe some of you kids out there who are listening are thankful for the same things. One of them said mom and dad. One of them said my bicycle. One of them said I'm thankful that my daddy reads me stories. My teenage grandchildren were thankful for their iPhones.
Yeah.
So,
We all are these days.
right,
Yeah.
especially these days. So I'm also thankful to Children's Book World for for putting this on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maddie. We really appreciate your sharing us with all the people that come to your store. Thank you.
I'm thankful for you guys too. Thank you so much for coming on. We've gotten all sorts of nice comments saying hello to you all that I'll be sharing with you after the event. If anyone has particular questions that they want you to answer, they can put those in the chat as well.
Okay.
Oh, good. That would be fun.
Oh, one little thing. This isn't it's not a promotion thing, but if anybody would like to see more of my artwork, and for you little kids out there, you can ask your parents if you can do this. But I have an Instagram account that I put up drawings and paintings that I do pretty much, once a day or so. And happy for you to jump in. And I generally answer a lot of questions on that as well. So the Instagram account is at David Walker Studios. And happy for you to jump on and see what I'm up to in the studio these days.
Oh, it's fascinating, if I may jump in here, just to see his process. And it's especially fun to go on when I know he's working on one of my books.
Oh, you get to cheat a look and see
get a little preview of it, which is great fun.
You get to see if I'm late on my assignments.
On your kids might be interested to know that, I mean, here David and I are talking to you together, but I live in Los Angeles and David lives in North Carolina, and we only met in person once when I was in North Carolina, and we did a school visit and a book signing together, but that was the first time. And normally, although our editor now does share with your sketches with me,
Mm-hmm.
But normally that isn't true. Normally, I don't.
No,
I get to see the sketches. That's not true now. I am now getting to see the sketches, but there was a time when I was first starting out, and maybe they didn't trust me not to say, oh, yeah. I don't like that dog, something, but we don't meet.
Yeah, everyone always thinks that the process is that the writer and the illustrator are together in the same room, and I never see the stories while Anne is working on them. She works with the publisher, and once the publisher has the story exactly the way they want it, then they invite me into the process to do my part. So it was something to get used to, but that's the process is a little different than most people would think when you're doing a book as a shared book, if you're not writing and illustrating it yourself, right?
But let's explain why that process is, because you add a new storyline to, you add new characters, you add birds and deer and whatever. Oh, you added what is this animal? The fish with the I'm trying to find here. What is that?
That's a narwhal.
Narwhal.
I mean, if you're going to do a penguin, you have to have one of those. It's part of being a children's book illustrator. You have to put those in wherever you possibly can.
So, okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so first, there's a very important question for David. David, is that your dog in the photo on your Instagram account? Fiona Kensel says that he is very beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I have two dogs, and one of them is started off literally this big, and he turned into a 90-pound dog that is absolutely enormous. So he's, yeah, I've got a puppy that's huge and an older dog that's little. Yeah.
Cute. And then another question from Michael Hartublood. What recommendations would you both have for a dad who has had a fun idea for a series of children's books rattling around in his head for 10 years? Is being 55 too old to start?
No, it's not too old to start, Michael. But my advice is to start and to write those down. And I know it's a little scary, and often when you write something the first time, I mean, always when I write something and I think it's great, and then I read it and, oh God, it's just awful. But that, I don't want you to get discouraged by your first effort. The great part about writing is that you can do it over again. You know, in real life, you say something and you wish you hadn't said it. Or you think afterwards, oh, if I'd only put it this way. In writing, you get to put it that way. You get to revise it and make it closer to what you had in your head. So
And
start writing. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
if I can jump in too, because I get this question an awful lot from beginning writers that contact me, and they ask me if I can do the illustrations, thinking that they need to have an illustrated book that then they submit to a publisher. I want to just let anybody that's listening out there who's interested in doing their own writing, you do not need to do that. As a matter of fact, not only do you not need to do that, you probably shouldn't, because a lot of times, if you do submit your writing to a publisher and they would like to assign that to a certain artist that has a certain look, they also make a lot of changes along the way too. They may accept your story and then say, we want to change the tone on page 6 and 7, and that might change all the rest of the book going forward. They still have taken your book, but they do massage it a bit. So you don't feel daunted by, I need to go out and find this illustrator to illustrate a book, or else I'm not going to be able to send it in. The process, maybe it would, well, I'll leave that aside, but that's just not the way that the process has to work. And they are used to seeing books just entirely in written form and can visualize the artwork. They do that every single day, and they're frankly really good at it. So don't let that hold you up. The other last thing that I'll mention to you, if you don't have if you're a beginning writer, just go on each publisher's website and see if they accept what's called an unsolicited manuscript. Some will not look at it, and unless you have an agent, and some do. They say, we accept unsolicited manuscripts. Go after those initially if you choose not to get an agent first, and that might help your process. And once you send it in, go do something else. It takes a long time to get the feedback. Don't sit there and wait and say, they got it on Thursday, why haven't they responded by Friday? That's all my advice for you on that one.
I always used to have a fantasy that I would send the manuscript out and the editor would read it and pick up the phone and instantly call me to tell me what a great manuscript it was. Doesn't happen that way. In fact, I just heard from someone who submitted something in January of this year and still has not heard. So
it happens.
I would suggest I would suggest start writing another book.
Yes, do something in the meantime. Don't sit and check off your calendar waiting for that response. If the response comes, it's going to come, but it will come at their time. So
right.
I do have another question for you all from Dana, who asks, was it just serendipity that you two were brought together? Who realized that you were meant for each other?
That's a little strong.
The editor was Melanie Krupa. And I'll tell you my reaction. I don't know if I've ever told David this, but I published maybe 10 or 15 books by that time. And one of the considerations that publishers take in choosing an illustrator is they like to pair a beginning writer with a more established illustrator just for marketing purposes. That an established artist can pull in fans of their books to help pull the new writer along. So when she told me that she had chosen David, who had never done a children's book. I was excited. I thought that meant I had arrived. And then I saw his art, and I just love the warmth and love that he puts in his illustrations.
Well, thank you, and that's a good way to look at working with the first time illustrator. The combination was a nice one from the standpoint of I had been in the artwork business for several years, just had never done a children's book, which I don't think I would have really been able to do looking back on it had I not had two young children at the time. So that was tremendously helpful because I was already spending those, nights, reading the bedtime stories, and my house was surrounded with children's books at that point anyway, which I always enjoyed from an artwork point of view. But once I really got to see which ones my personal children engaged with, I think that it really taught me what being a children's book illustrator was all about. And it's less about my artwork and more about what is it that the kids are going to gravitate towards. So yeah, it was really, really good timing for all of us.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that is all the questions that we had. Was there anything else that you two wanted to add before we wrap up?
Thank you for
Yeah,
doing
thank you again.
this.
Appreciate it.
And
Okay,
thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, and thank you, David, for being with us today. Thanks to everyone watching. You can find their book on our website. There's a link in the YouTube description and in the YouTube chat. You can also, at this point, make appointments on our website to come browse in the store if you want to come check out which one is going to be your favorite. Feel free to find those on our website as well, www.childrensbookworld.com. Otherwise, thank you all for coming and have a great
and all the books are signed, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And the books are
There we
all
go.
going to be have signed book plates as well. Thank you. All right. Thanks everyone and have a great day.
Thanks, Banny.